Shalom, shalom. This is your brother Samuel from Image and Likeness of Yahshua Ministries. And I'm making this video in regards to this holiday that we all know as Christmas, everybody's favorite holiday, right? Um, so in the last few years or so, a lot of things have been coming out because we are living in the last days. And so there's a lot of truth and a lot of things that has been being exposed in these end times, you know, including a lot of the paganism and the false worship that's associated with a lot of the man-made holidays that, we all love and celebrate. So, upon a lot of this truth coming out, um, a lot of people have been going to do research. People are trying to find out the truth. They're looking into things for themselves, especially in regards to this one that's coming up right now, which is Christmas, and about it being a pagan holiday and why believers should not, or a lot of people are stepping back from celebrating Christmas and amongst other holidays, So um, I decided to make this video, to speak out about why we do not celebrate Christmas as believers in the Bible, as Christians, or whatever terminology you may use, to define yourself. If you're somebody who believe in the Bible, as we are, you believe in the whole Bible, Old, New Testament, and you believe that Christ, the Most High, Christ Jesus is the Lord and Savior, then this video is for you. It's for anybody, honestly, but it's for those of us who are Bible believers. This is why we do not celebrate Christmas, and why I believe that if you are a follower of Christ, and if you are a believer in the Bible, that you should not partake in Christmas either. So as I was saying, a lot of things been coming out as far as Christmas goes, and it being a pagan holiday, and all of these different things. Now, at the point where we are at right now, being that this is the information age, a lot of people know and understand that. There are Christians who, when you first brought these things to them, they didn't really know what to say because they probably never really had much knowledge about it. So what they would do is they go and they look into these things. You go and try to research it and try to find out for yourself because, if it's something that you're doing, and somebody's telling you that, hey, this has nothing to do with Christ or his birthday. You know what I'm saying? This have nothing to do with the Most High, and the scriptures never sanctioned us to be celebrating, these holidays in this way. Then you want to try to go and look into some things. So what I've been noticing the time that we're in right now is that a lot of them have went and they've done their due diligence, they've done their research, and they're seeing, okay, because it's such a known thing, it's not a hard thing to find or figure out at all. You know, you can go to your local library and just research Christmas, the origins of it, the history behind Christmas, and you'll definitely see that, these things began with paganism and with false worship. It's not something that, people do not know or understand. So a lot of Christians, even themselves, they have who still celebrate Christmas. They have went and they have done the research, and you know, because the history is clear, there's no way that they can get around the fact that, okay, yeah, these holidays definitely are pagan. They definitely have pagan origins. All of these things are wrong. However, what I'm seeing now is that there is a movement of people who feel the need to try to defend celebrating it, although or in spite of its pagan origins. And so you have a lot of Christians, you got a lot of people that call themselves Bible believers who are trying to defend the celebration of Christmas. Now, so one thing, if you don't know, about these things, and you're just ignorant to the fact of, the origins and what these things are connected to. But it's a difference when you go and and you understand, and instead of you, getting to yourself and seeking the Most High, and His will and His word on these things and repenting, for the things that you may have been doing in ignorance, Then you turn and decide that, well, okay, now you want to try to find a way to make these things okay, to make these things, be right before the Lord, or to make it something that's permissible for Christians to do to celebrate Christmas. So I wanted to get into a little bit of that, today, and I'm gonna show why from the Bible we do not celebrate Christmas and why we do not believe that if you are a follower of Christ or a Bible believer that you should be celebrating Christmas, and all of the defenses that a lot of these people are coming up with to try to justify the continuance of these things, because it's not an easy thing to let go. It's not, you know what I'm saying? It's not something that a lot of people want to let go. You're used to it. You've been doing it all your life. Your family members then passed it down to you. It's tradition. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, all right, I don't want to step away from these things. So you begin to try to find ways to justify or to make these things right. And um, with all due respect, I'm going to kill all of that, because there's no way from the Bible that we can make this okay with the Most High. I'm not going to spend too much time on trying to prove the pagan origins of Christmas, because, like I said, a lot of people already know. Even people who you know will still like to celebrate Christmas, they're not denying the fact that, okay, this stuff is definitely pagan. You know what I mean? They're not trying to even go against that. They're saying, okay, yes, the origins of it is pagan, but yeah, it is pagan. It did come from this, that, and the other, but so that's where we kind of are today. However, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on trying to prove that, because it's very easily proven. You can look into any Encyclopedia Britannica, and look in a Catholic encyclopedia, the World Book Encyclopedia, wherever you want to go. Just go to your library. It's easy to find out the origins and all of the false worship that's connected with this day. I am going to read a little bit to y'all from the New World Encyclopedia, and I'm going to do just a little bit of elaborating so we can get some understanding on a lot of these things. And then after that, and this is just for people who may or may not be familiar with the information. You may not be familiar with the history or the origins of these things. So, I'm going to give a foundation of where I'm coming from, and then I'm going to get into the scriptures. I'm going to go into the Bible and show you why from the Bible we should not be, as believers, should be celebrating, this holiday, and amongst other holidays. But we're going to deal with Christmas for right now. All right. So let me get myself together, and we're just gonna get a couple of quotes from the New World Encyclopedia on the origins, the history of Christmas. All right. I would advise you to go and read the entire entry, because it's a lot of information in there. We don't have time for all of that, but we're gonna get just a few points that I want to elaborate on, and that I'm going to show that I'm gonna be able to show you from the scriptures, why those things are not right. So it says, besides its Christian roots, many Christmas traditions have their origins in pagan winter celebrations. Examples of winter festivals that have influenced Christmas include the pre-Christian festivals of Yule and the Roman Saturnalia. So, like I said, this is just regular old history, and they're telling you, from the jump, that a lot of the customs and the traditions that are tied to Christmas, although people will tell you it's a Christian holiday, that they have their origins in pagan winter celebrations. um, some of those being the festivals of Yule and the Roman festival of Saturnalia. So what they used to, the things that they would believe, in those times. Um, well, they was associated with sun worship, but we'll get further into that. We're going to let the encyclopedia talk. It says, while Christmas began as a religious holiday, it has appropriated many secular characteristics over the time, including many variations of Santa Claus myth, decoration, and the display of the Christmas tree, and other aspects of consumer culture. Many distinct regional traditions of Christmas are still practiced around the world. Despite the widespread influence of Anglo-American Christmas motifs disseminated in popular culture. Now, it says, the historical development of Christmas is quite fascinating. According to the Bible, Jesus' birth was celebrated by many well-wishers, including the Magi who came bearing gifts. The early Christians in the Roman Empire wished to continue this practice, but found that celebrating Jesus' birth was very dangerous under Roman rule. So this thing is beginning from what? It's beginning from the story of Christ being born in a manger, and we know what, that the Magi came and they came to Christ, and they came and they was bringing gifts, right? So now Christians who were living in Rome and maybe other areas decide that they want to continue this tradition, right? They want to continue, doing this, and they're saying that we're going to celebrate Jesus' birthday as well, just like the Magi did. So they're saying that this is where this thing started from, or this is where they got it from. So we're going to continue this. I want to point out and for you to notice that this is a decision that they've made on their own. This is not something that's ordained, or this is not something that's sanctioned by the Most High. All right, this is something that they have decided to do. That they was a tradition that they wanted to continue to, to keep going. However, we do not have anywhere in the scriptures that tell us to celebrate the Lord's birthday, and that's just a fact. You cannot find it at all. You do not find any evidence of Jesus Christ celebrating his own birthday. You do not find any evidence of the disciples or the apostles of Christ who walked with him and who were eyewitnesses of him and his ministry celebrating his birthday while he was alive or after his death. But you have early Christians who decided that this is something that they want to do, right? So let's keep that in mind. So it says, the early Christians in the Roman Empire wished to continue this practice, but found that celebrating Jesus' birth was very dangerous under Roman rule, where being a Christian could be punishable by death. Thus, Christians began to celebrate Christ's birthday on December the 25th, which was already an important pagan festival, in order to safely adapt to Roman customs while still honoring Jesus' birth. So, what it's telling you is this. See, this is the time before Rome had become Christian itself, under Constantine and under his son. So this is a time when Christians who were living in Rome they were being persecuted at this time. And so what they wanted to do, because they decided that they want to celebrate Jesus Christ's birthday, but however, it was dangerous for them to do that. What does it say? However, it was dangerous for them to do that. And so what they decided to do was adapt in the Roman customs in a way where they can still honor Jesus Christ's birthday. So basically what they did was all of these traditions, the customs, the practices, and the customs that the Romans were doing in their pagan festivals and their pagan celebrations, and which is rooted in false worship. They took those things, they took those elements basically, and they put Christ's name on it. And they was doing it out of, trying to remain safe. We want to honor Jesus, but we don't want to end up in a situation where we'll be being persecuted. So we're going to celebrate Jesus the way that these other people are celebrating their holy days, their festivals, their holidays, but we're just going to we're going to stamp Jesus's name on it, so that we don't come under any type of circumstances that would be against us. You see what I'm saying? So now, whether or not their intentions were good or not, number one, we got two problems. Number one, we have a problem where nobody told them to do this. This is not something that was sanctioned by the Most High, and this is not something that the Lord commanded us to do. So they was putting themselves in more trouble than they had to in the first place. You see what I'm saying? So now, because you decide to do something, now you have to adopt the pagan customs. You got to adopt these rituals. You have to adopt their practices and their traditions into your faith in order for you to be able to honor Jesus' birthday that you was never commanded to do in the first place. And we're going to see that there's a problem with that. There's a problem with adapting to the customs and the traditions of these nations. And especially if you're going to put God in the mix of it when we get into the scriptures. But I just want to lay a foundation right now just to, walk with me. And you'll see exactly where we're going. So he's saying a Christian could be punishable by death. Thus, Christians began to celebrate Christ's birthday on December the 25th, which was already an important pagan festival in order to safely adapt to Roman customs while still honoring Jesus' birth. So, December the 25th. So, this date, in and of itself, what you got to understand is the pagans, what they did was they were dismayed by the signs of heaven, we'll say, as it says in Jeremiah chapter 10. So, at this time, around what we call Christmas time, is what you would call the winter solstice. And so what they did, because they were worshipers of nature, they worshiped, trees, they worshiped solar deities, they worshiped the things that was around them because they looked at nature as God, and they would personify nature and they would build their mythologies and their false gods based off of nature. And one thing they would do was build their false gods based off of the movements of the sun. And so December the 25th, they would watch the sun, the winter solstice, and what they would look when they look at the sun, they see it's getting colder outside. They see that the days are getting shorter. They was looking at that like the sun was dying, right? They was looking at that like the sun was dying, and they worship the sun. So what they looking at and they saying to themselves, okay, the sun is dying. This is why they began to look at and worship the evergreen tree, because they see the trees and everything, falling off a little, but the evergreen tree, it stays green, all year round. This is how they began to idolize that tree. They would look at the movements of the sun. They would see around the time of what we would call Christmas time, December 25th, the days would stop getting shorter. And then that slow gradually, as you see the days begin to get shorter, then the days start to go back the other way. Over time, the days get longer again. But they will look at this, when the days would stop getting shorter, that this was the rebirth of the sun, or what they call the unconquerable sun. So they celebrated this as the birth of the sun, and they had a lot of false deities and many different cultures that was associated with this, with the birth of the sun, S-U-N, right? And so what you will come to find out is that what Christians did is we just Christianized it. We changed it from the birth of the sun, S-U-N, to the birth of the sun, S-O-N, right? And what you'll come to find out is there's a problem with that. You can't you can't do things like that. You cannot take pagan customs and traditions and then try to Christianize them, whether no matter what your intentions are. You know what I mean? And what's being pushed right now is that, oh, we did it in rivalry to the pagans. You know what I'm saying? But I'm gonna show you that that's not necessarily true. What was being done was, it was a lot of appeasing being done. It was a lot of compromise that was being done. It was a lot of, okay, because what you'll see is right now in Rome, they was getting killed for it, but eventually Rome becomes Christian in and of itself and begins to outlaw worshiping some of these other gods. So what they wanted to do was convert a lot of the pagans, which we'll get to in a minute. And when they wanted to convert them, they allowed for them to bring in a lot of their different customs. You just got to let go of those gods. Now you do those things under Christ. And so they began to Christianize a lot of the pagan rituals, customs, and traditions. And I'm going to show you that that is an abomination to the Most High. You cannot do that. But let's continue reading. He says, this is how Christmas came to be. Let me see. I don't want to miss nothing. Which was already an important pagan festival in order to safely adapt to Roman customs while still honoring Jesus' birth. This is how Christmas came to be celebrated on the Roman holiday of Saturnalia, and it was from the pagan holiday that many of the customs of Christmas had their roots. The celebrations of Saturnalia included the making and giving of small presents. This holiday was observed over a series of days beginning on December 17th, the birthday of Saturn. and ending on December 25th, the birthday of Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. So this is, like I said, this is just secular history. This is not, nobody has an agenda. You know what I'm saying? This is coming right out of the New World Encyclopedia. You know, I'm not reading from any religious sources or nobody trying to prove nothing. But this is just letting you know that these things, all of these customs and these traditions and these practices that you celebrate, even down to the very date of picking December the 25th, this is about paganism, and it was adapted from paganism. You see what I'm saying? And it was adapted and interlaced with Christianity. You understand? This is well, what the scriptures would call spiritual fornication and adultery. You see, but what a lot of Christians want to say is that, okay, yeah, we were rivaling the pagans. Listen, if you want to rival something, how are you taking all of their customs and their traditions and their practices and they're stamping Christianity on it? That's some rivalry. You know what I'm saying? That's some type of rivalry. You're basically doing everything that you receive from the other nations, from the heathen nations that were worshiping false gods, that had false worship, and you're trying to put Jesus Christ's name on it. That's basically what you're doing, and you cannot do that. All right, which I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna show you that. But let's keep reading. It says, "This is how Christmas came to be celebrated on the Roman holiday of Saturnalia, and it was from the pagan holiday that many of the customs of Christmas had their roots. The celebrations of Saturnalia included making and giving of small presents. This holiday was observed over a series of days, beginning on December 17th, the birthday of Saturn, the ending of December 25th, the birthday of the Sol Invictus. The combined festivals resulted in an extended winter holiday season. Business was postponed. Even slaves feasted. They were drinking, gambling, singing. Nudity was relatively common. It was the best of days, according to the poet Catullus." So, keep reading. "The Feast of Sol Invictus on December 25th was a sacred day in the religion of Mithraism, which was widespread in the Roman Empire. Its god Mithras was a solar deity of Persian origin, identified with the sun. It displayed its unconquerability as Sol Invictus when it began to rise higher in the sky following the winter solstice." This is what I was telling you. Hence, December 25th was celebrated as the sun's birthday. In 274 CE, Emperor Aurelian officially designated December 25th as the festival of Sol Invictus. All right. So, just showing you, right off of the jump, that all of these things, this day that you're keeping, this is not something new. This is not something that was originated by the Most High. This is not something that comes from the Bible. This is not something that comes from, from true biblical Christianity. This is something that was adopted, that we adapted to, that we interlaced, that we intermingled with Christianity, and basically put Jesus's name on top of it when these things had nothing to do with him. Like I said, this is not a rivalry against paganism. This is an adapting to paganism. This is an adoption to paganism. This is taking all of the customs and traditions and the practices and basically trying to Christianize those things and put Jesus Christ's name on it. That is not how you rival paganism. I'm gonna show you how you rival paganism in the Bible, and when we get to the scriptures. So let's get a little bit more, right? So the impetus for the celebration of Christmas increased after Constantius, son of Emperor Constantine, decreed that all non-Christian temples in the empire be immediately closed, and anyone who still offered sacrifices of worship to the gods and goddesses in these temples was to be put to death. All right? So now we have Constantine, his son, and they come on the scene, they convert to Christianity. So now you have Christianity basically is in the ruling class. So now they decide, hey, you can't be offering sacrifices to these other gods. You can't be doing none of that. Basically, Rome is Christian, and that's what you got to get with. You feel what I'm saying? So we'll see what happens with that. He said, anyone who still offers sacrifices of worship to the gods and the goddesses in these temples was to be put to death. The followers of Mithras were eventually forced to convert under these laws. In spite of their conversion, they adapted many elements of their old religions into Christianity. Among these was the celebration of the birth of Mithras on December 25th, which was now observed as the birthday of Jesus. So when Rome got into power and they wanted to Christianize everything, guess what? You have pagans who had already been celebrating certain things. They already had different beliefs. They already had different practices. What are they gonna do? They don't want to. I'm being forced to convert to something, right? So what are they doing? When they do, they're going to bring in the things into the church. They're bringing these things in into Christianity, right? And the Christians adapted these things as well by the means of compromise and appeasement. Because now you see these things are okay. They are exceptional to the Roman Catholic Church, who was converting these people. You see what I'm saying? To the Romans who was converting these people. You can look in the catechisms and all of these things. They believed that it was okay to put Jesus Christ's name on top of these pagan festivals, as long as they got rid of the false gods. As long as in their mind, if you do it in Jesus' name, then it's okay. You know what I'm saying? All of those customs, the traditions, the partying, the practicing. You know what I'm saying? All of those things are now basically just being wrapped into Jesus Christ's name. You feel what I'm saying? That is what you call um, Christianizing the people, and that's what happened. The people got Christianized, but they didn't really get Christianized biblically. They didn't really get Christianized according to the Bible. Remember, they was forced to convert, but they weren't about to let go of none of the things that they was doing. And as long as you gave adoration to Jesus Christ, whatever you was doing was okay, according, in the Roman rule, as long as you was doing it to Jesus and not to Mithra. You see what I'm saying? But we know that from the Bible, this is not correct. So the Christians adapted these things that the pagans was doing because they weren't going to let them go. It was a compromise between the two. That's what the truth is. A lot of pastors and stuff that's out there today, they want to make it as though, oh no, we went against these things. Yeah, so in continuing with what I was saying, the way that a lot of these pastors are trying to do now and trying to defend celebrating Christmas is they're trying to say, oh no, well, we did these things, we set Christmas up as a rivalry against the pagans, but no, it's not it. They were in Christianity was influenced by the pagans. They adopted the very things and the very customs and practices that the pagans were doing. That is what the truth of the matter is. You see what I'm saying? And continuing with reading, it says Northern Europe was the last part to Christianize, and its pagan celebrations had a major influence on Christmas. Scandinavians still call Christmas Yuletide, originally the name of the 12-day pre-Christian winter festival. Logs were lit to honor Thor, the god of thunder. Hence the Yule log in Germany, the equivalent holiday is called Midwinter Night. Um, so, like I was saying, these things that Christianity did as far as making Christmas about Christ, and these things were not something that was a rivalry. You understand? It may have been a rivalry against some of the pagan gods, but in this thing that you're doing, in what you're trying to set up, in how you're trying to Christianize the people, you're being influenced by what the very things that the people are doing who are being forced to convert, who are coming into the religion. You see what I'm saying? They're influencing now the things that are being done. You understand? Because number one, what do we know as believers today? We know that you can't force anybody to convert to anything. You see what I'm saying? And so what the Christians need to accept is this, that Christmas is not something that was ordained by the Most High. It is not something that we are commanded to do nor celebrate in the Bible. This is something that people decided to do on their own. You know, this is something, a decision that was made that people decided to go into. And in order to appease a lot of the people of the time who they were trying to convert to the new religion, to Christianity, to this new faith, that they were influenced by a lot of the things that they were doing. You understand that they adopted a lot of the false worship, a lot of the paganism, and a lot of the false customs and practices that was coming from the nations that had nothing to do with the Bible. That is just fact. You know, like I say, even secular history will tell you that. This is not, you know, anything religious that I'm reading this stuff to you from. So what we have to do is we have to get in a position of accepting that when something, you know, a lot of times, and I'll say most of the times, when the foundation of something is not right, then we need to understand that most likely that thing is not right. You know what I'm saying? We can't make it a holy thing when it's just not. What it is a compromise. It is an intermingling, and it is a interlacing Christianity or Christ with paganism. That's what Christmas is. This is a pagan holiday that has Jesus's name stamped on top of it. That's just the facts. You know, that's not anything that we can argue against. And I'm gonna show you this, that things was known. I'm gonna keep reading. It says during the Reformation, Protestants, because, and I want to point that out, because what I'm seeing a lot of Protestants who are trying to now defend celebrating Christmas, right? And what they're doing, in order for them to do that, you're going to have to align yourself with the Roman Catholic Church. You understand? They're trying to take up for and defend and say, no, Christians were doing this. It was a rivalry. We're trying to, stand for Christ. You understand? And what they're doing is they're speaking about Roman Catholicism. How did the Protestants, which you claim to be, most people that I'm coming in contact with, and I come in contact with Catholics too, because I live in a mixed area, with a lot of Hispanics and different things like that. And so a lot of them actually are Catholic. But then I have some other individuals, who are Protestant or who are anti Catholic to an extent, that you're defending the celebrations of Christmas as well, and basically you're subsiding with the decisions that the Roman Catholics made. You understand? And saying that celebrating Christmas is okay. But however, how did the Protestants, where you claim to be, how did they respond to Christmas? It says during the Reformation, Protestants condemned condemned Christmas celebrations as trappings of popery and the rags of the beast, the Catholic Church. So if you want to stand with Christians, if you want to say, no, it was, that what we were doing was we were trying to combat. If you want to side with somebody, how about you side with what you claim to be, a Protestant? The Protestants were not going for it. You understand? I'm gonna show you some things. A lot of you don't even know that Christmas was outlawed in America for a long time because many people, Bible believing people, stood up and they said, no, this ain't got nothing to do with the Bible. This don't have anything to do with Christ. You know what I'm saying? And they stood up against what the Christianization of all of this paganism. You see what I'm saying? So we standing up against those things too. Let's keep going. During the Reformation, Protestants condemned Christmas celebration as trappings of popery and the rags of the beast, the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church responded by promoting the festival in a more religiously oriented form. When a Puritan parliament triumphed over King Charles I of England in 1644, Christmas was officially banned. 1647. Pro-Christmas rioting broke out in several cities for several weeks. Canterbury was controlled by the rioters who decorated doorways with holly, shouted royalist slogans. The Restoration ended the ban, but Christmas celebration was still disapproved of by the Anglican clergy. Who are the Anglican clergy? They were members of the Protestant movement, the Reformation. which is what a lot of you people who are celebrating Christmas and who defend Christmas are supposed to be a part of. Protestant, meaning to protest. They protested the Catholic Church and a lot of the beliefs of the Catholic Church, customs and traditions of the Catholic Church. Why? Because the Catholic Church was going away from the Bible. The Catholic Church was not standing on what was originally delivered to the apostles and the disciples of Christ. The Catholic Church was intermingling and interlacing itself with the other nations, with the pagan nations that was around them. And that's why, that's a whole nother lesson about, the mother of harlots and her daughters and all of these different things. That's something else that we could talk about at another time. But that's why the Most High is going to judge the harlot in the last days. But we can deal with that at another point. But however, who's the Anglican Church? They were Anglicans. Where your King James Bible that you probably reading from, that you're using to defend to defend Christmas. He was a part of the Anglican clergy and translated your Bible into English against the wishes of the Roman Catholic Church. You see what I'm saying? And guess what? They condemned the celebration of Christmas. You understand? And so that's just something for you to maybe put in your pocket to think about. Let's see. So, the Puritans of New England disapproved of Christmas, and the celebrations was outlawed in Boston, 1659 through 1681. Meanwhile, Christians in Virginia and New York celebrated freely. Christmas fell out of favor in the U.S. after the American Revolution, when it was considered an English custom. Interest was revived by several short stories by Washington Irving, the sketchbook of Geoffrey Crayon, which depicted harmonious, warm-hearted holiday traditions Irving claimed to have observed in England. Although some argue that Irving invented the traditions he described, they were imitated by his American readers. Basically, what they tried to do was they tried to reinvent it, and bring Christmas back to look, very wholesome and real wholehearted, a real nice thing, make it real nice and pretty for the people, for them to go into, get back into celebrating and make this thing something wholesome, make this thing something good. Because from the beginning, there was always issue with the fact that, number one, this thing has nothing to do with the Bible. It does not come from Christ. We have no evidence of it in the scriptures or any of the apostles or disciples celebrating it in any way. When we look at it, what we're seeing is that it is closely associated with, and it has adopted and has been highly influenced by the practices and the traditions of paganism. Even the very dates that we're celebrating the birthday of Christ is the very same time that these people celebrated the birthday of these false deities that were associated with sun worship. You understand? And so we also adapted all of the other customs that they were doing, all of the gift giving, the trees, and decorating them, and the partying, all of these different things. We'll get into some other things as well, but all of this stuff was brought into Christianity. Christianity adopted the influences of the pagans and of these nations. Christ wasn't born on December the 25th. We all know that. But you say, okay, well, it's okay for us to choose and pick when we want to celebrate his birthday if we want to. He was never commanded to celebrate his birthday in the first place. But now it's okay for you to just choose whenever you want to. You don't even feel that it's necessary to find out, when he was actually born. If you're going to make a decision to do something on your own. And not only that, we're going to go ahead and do it the same day that the pagans celebrate their gods. What would be the motivation for that? The motivation for that to you is rivalry. However, everything that they're doing in celebration and in honor to their gods that they celebrate on December the 25th is the same things that you're doing. And to celebrate the birth of your son, the Son of God, on December the 25th. This is not a rivalry to me, and if it is, this is a very, very poor job. You know what I'm saying? This is like the worst rivalry I've ever seen in my life. But we're gonna show you too that what no matter what your intentions was from the scriptures, you can't do that. You understand? That's not the way you rival anything, any paganism. You know what I'm saying? And all you did was adapted these holidays and these customs. You see what I'm saying? And the truth of the matter is, it was in appeasement and it was in compromise to the pagans who was converting over to Christianity, who did not want to let go of their customs and traditions. Even the Christians they were already they was doing the same things the pagans was doing already. You understand? So they just brought the stuff over into Christianity and just, we just gonna make it about Christ. That's truly what it is. That's all that it is. Let's get a little bit more. In Western culture, the holiday is characterized by the exchange of gifts among friends and family members. Some of the gifts being attributed to Santa Claus, also known as Father Christmas, Saint Nicholas, Saint Basil, and Father Frost. Father Christmas predates the Santa Claus character and was first recorded in the 15th century, but was associated with holiday merrymaking and drunkenness. Santa Claus is a variation of a Dutch folk tale based on the historical figure Saint Nicholas of Sinterklaas, who gave gifts on the eve of his feast day of December 6th. He became associated with Christmas in the 19th century America and was renamed Santa Claus or Saint Nick. How in the world? Because I've even seen this. I've seen, can Santa Claus be redeemed? And so what they're saying is, oh, Santa Claus is actually real. He's a good, it's a good thing that we could teach our children. It's just Saint Nicholas, who was a saint in from the Roman Catholicism, and he was known for charity and, piety and doing for others and things of that nature. So we can honor Saint Nicholas. We could keep Santa Claus in honor of Saint Nicholas. But and we understand that Santa Claus is a variation based on Saint Nicholas, because what do the Roman Catholics do? And once again, here are the Protestants once again having to coincide themselves with the harlot, with the Roman Catholic Church, because you are her daughters, and that's what you'll come to find out eventually one day. But so this is a variation of Dutch folktale, mythology, paganism. So what they did, they took one of their dead saints, and then that you had Dutch folktale and mythology coming from the pagans to be wrapped into this figure that they already venerated in the Roman Catholic Church, and basically deified this man. Because you look at Santa Claus, Santa Claus is just like Christ. You know what I'm saying? How did all of these things become associated with him? It came from the pagans. It came from these Dutch folk tales and mythology. You know what I'm saying? This is why Santa Claus lives at the North Pole and Christ is in heaven above us. This is why he flies through the sky and he keeps an eye on all of the children who being good and who being bad. The same way that the Most High does, and he judges them the same way that Christ judges us. Right? And he has rewards that he's going to give to you at the end of the year. The same way Christ has rewards that he gives to the faithful upon his return. Right? How did all of this stuff get associated with Mr. St. Nicholas? Because you have been influenced by paganism. And that's what you don't want to accept. Okay? Number one, we're not told to be reverencing dead saints anyway. You know what I'm saying? That's a Roman Catholic thing, and that's not something that comes from the Bible in and of itself. You understand? So you can try to use that and say, yeah, we could keep Santa Claus. Santa Claus is okay, but no, we're not told to be reverencing dead saints in the first place. Number one. Number two, definitely not deifying and putting all this mysticism with this person and lying to our children. You know what I'm saying? Which goes directly against the commandments. We lying to our kids about not only a Santa Claus, but an Easter Bunny and a tooth fairy, all of these different things. When you continue to do that, what do you think? And you telling them about Christ, Jesus, you telling them about the Most High, and you lying to them when they find out that they've been lied to, what you think they're going to think about the Most High? What do you how much they gonna trust you about what you say about the Creator? But you can't because you think it's okay to lie to your children about these mythological beings, and it's not right. It's not right. You got to understand that God is watching all of that. You know what I'm saying? It might be a light thing to you. You may think that it's not that serious. You don't know God, and that's what I'm gonna show you from these scriptures who this God is and why you cannot play with Him like that. You understand? So, um, yeah, Santa Claus coming, he coming through your chimney and you leaving, stockings on your thing and you leave them cookies and milk and all of this stuff. All of this stuff come from somewhere. Even back, it's different variations of Santa Claus or say Nicholas, the way that they've mystified him and deified him. In some cultures, Santa Claus is accompanied by neck ruprecht. I don't know if I said that right, but in English it would be called Black Peter. In other versions, it's elves making the holiday toys. You know what I'm saying? But you can look into all of that. You can go and look into Black Peter and the elves and where they all come into. I'm gonna keep it real with you. They're demons. It's Satan. Black Peter is Satan. Do it. Research it yourself. You know what I'm saying? Just go and look into these things and find out what this is all about. We'll read a little bit more. The Christmas tree. The Christmas tree is often explained as a Christianization of an ancient pagan idea that evergreen trees like pine and juniper symbolize hope and anticipation of a return of spring and the renewal of life. This is what I was telling you. When they look at the tree, they look outside, they see everything dying, they see the weather getting colder, they look at the evergreen tree, the pine tree and the juniper tree, and they say, oh, these trees are not dying. They're keeping their life. All these things represent eternal life. They began to um, worship these trees. You understand? They began to idolize these things. You feel me? So this is why we cannot adopt these things. And so what you go and do is you take the customs of the pagans and you go and you bring idols into your house. Because that's what it was when you begin, because of when you understand the ideology that was attached to the trees and all of these different things, the reefs and all of that stuff on your house. When you understand the mentality that those things came from, then you understand how it's idolatry. You see what I'm saying? And so basically, once again, just like the article says, the Christmas tree is a Christianization of the ancient pagan ideas. That's all that it is. That's all that it was. You understand? So I just wanted to I believe that's all that we're gonna get into with that. You know what I'm saying? Let me see what else it's saying. Several Christian denominations, notably the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Puritans, and some fundamentalists, they always view Christian as a pagan holiday not sanctioned by the Bible. Puritans, those are Protestants, which are mostly what a lot of you all would probably identify yourselves as, or would be classified as, whether or not you knew it or not. But yeah, so that's pretty much that on the history. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, a lot of people, they know and understand the history. You see, the history is not something that's hard to find. Like I said, anybody can go and look into those things, research those things. You see what's going on here. You understand? There was a lot of things going on, and there was a lot of paganism. There was a lot of, you know, people becoming Christian and honestly not really knowing the Bible, not really knowing the scriptures. Do you understand? And trying to be Christian and also dealing with the customs and the traditions that they had already been accustomed to, that they had already been, honoring and celebrating. And those things began to influence and began to get adopted into Christianity. They just ended up being Christianized, and Jesus Christ's name was stamped on top of it. That is the true history of Christmas. And this is why it's a pagan holiday. And this is why we do not celebrate it. So the question is, okay, so what's wrong with it? Why don't we celebrate it? Biblically, from the Bible, why can't we celebrate Christmas? Why can't we just say, Uh-oh, let me fix my cam. You feel me? Why can't we just say, well, we can celebrate Christmas. What's the problem with that? Well, let's go to the scriptures and let's find out what the problem is. Number one problem, we're not commanded to. The Bible is not sanctioned Christmas. Like I said before, we do not have any evidence of Jesus Christ himself celebrating his own birthday. We do not have any evidence of the apostles and the disciples celebrating Jesus Christ's birthday. And the Bible nowhere commands us or tells us to do that. So that's one issue. Because what you'll begin to find out is that when you say that, when you do that, when you make decrees like that, when you set up your own um, way that you're going to worship God or you're going to honor God, then what you're doing is you add into his word. Okay? You cannot decide how you're going to worship God. I don't know if a lot of people knew that or not, but when you read this Bible, the Most High is very specific about how people worship him. He lays it out very plainly. And going and trying to create a holiday or trying to create uh, how you're going to honor him and you're going to celebrate and uplift God, that is not what's commanded or that is not in association with or that is not sanctioned by the word of God, then you're in error. So Deuteronomy, when we look at Deuteronomy chapter 4 and verse 2, the scriptures say, "You shall not add unto the word which I command you, nor diminish out from it, that you may keep the commandments of the Lord your God." So the Lord is telling the children of Israel what? He's saying that he's saying, the things that I tell you to do, don't add to it and don't take away from it, but that you may keep the commandments of the Lord your God.